Barry Morphew had it all, a millionaire's golden crown, big house in the Rockies, king of a small town. But darkness brewed in his heart, a secret cold as stone. Suzanne went missing, her fate he would never own. In a shallow grave marked by one lone tree, under Colorado stars where no one would see. With a shovel and lies, he buried his sin, but the truth has a way of creeping back in. Oh, Barry, you ran to Cave Creek, Arizona, hiding in a biker bar, waiting for your secret bust. From riches to ruins, a trailer park the road. Now you're locked in a cage, forever alone. He fled to Arizona to outrun the law. Or was it his own guilt, secret wish to be caught? With villains before him, real desert outlaws hide. The ghost of Susan whispers to him all through the night. Suzanne would get her justice, things would be made right. For King Barry in his camper cage, no escape from justice light. From a mansion to an airstream, his empire now shattered dreams. Barry now alone with no home, no friends, a man who's lost everything. Suzanne took her time, the chess pieces in place. As Barry hid in fear, Suzanne prepared her case. They would find her body abandoned in a shallow grave, and Barry's murderous acts revealed by an insane path. Oh, Barry, you ran to Cave Creek, Arizona, hiding in a biker bar, a place that made him feel ever lonelier. From riches to ruins, a trailer park the road. Now you're locked in a cage, forever alone. In a cell with killers, thieves by his side. No more mountain sunsets, no place to hide. The elks still wander where Suzanne was laid. Her light shines bright, it will never fade.
Barry Morphew, 10/17/67.
Thank you, sir. And it does look like you are here today on a warrant from the state of Colorado, and they have indicated that they want to extradite you back to the state of Colorado.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are doing very well. Yep, that is Barry Morphew. So, this is people more and more, some of the channels that have not really talked about Barry much in the years since the charges were dropped. More and more they're picking it up, picking up the story. It'll die down again, though, as they're waiting for him to be extradited and work his way like through the court, right? So but there's a group of us here on YouTube that this was something different. This was a different kind of case where people felt it really personally, right? And I do think that a big part of that is how the idea that there was this woman living with domestic violence, and the state of Colorado just denied it. Like the state just said, no, 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 she's a missing person. She's wasn't living in danger. And yet we all saw the proof. The best friend in Florida released text messages. We saw the arrest affidavit that outlined a real pattern of domestic violence. And, you know, unfortunately, we live in a world dominated by people of power now are most often men. And I'm not saying that these men are all violent abusers, not by a long shot. There's a lot of incredibly great men. I have had the great fortune of the men in my life, except for one. The men in my life are really kind, good, decent people. My dad, my little brother, my husband, my son, the men that are in my life, great, amazing people. Gentle, kind, protective, strong, unselfish, happy, you know, they don't drink. So, you know, I'm not coming down on it. This isn't like man hating. It's just an observation that it's hard for men to have the experience of living in a situation where you are being physically dominated, actually, where your choices and the choices of your children are determined by the mood that, you know, dad may have when he comes home. We as women recognize that we're in very real peril in terms of just physical strength. We're in real peril not to be able to protect ourselves if we make the misfortune, if we make the bad choice of choosing a man who is not kind and loving and protective. If you marry someone like Barry Morphew, for example. So, you know, Suzanne's text hit upon that she was kind of at his mercy. And if he were to come home and be in a bad mood, then everybody's walking on eggshells and trying to be very careful because they don't want to deal with an angry, raging, judgmental man. And then on the other hand, when he was gone, then she was relaxed and happy and she was able to enjoy her beautiful home and her beautiful mountain. Her sister said that Suzanne fully embraced moving to Colorado and that she was very excited and very hopeful about the new house. That Suzanne actually is the one that decorated the house and purchased all of the furniture. And so, you know, you can see, and again, this conjecture on my part, because I don't know this, but just a guess, you can see where she might have felt like, okay, well, now we're going to be like in Barry's dream heaven. The wildlife, the outdoorsman, can walk right out of our back door and be in the wilderness, the backcountry that he craves and loves so well. And he's going to be happy now. We're going to get back to our lives when we were young, and he'll experience a return of happiness, and he'll have the weight of the world lifted off of his shoulders, correct? And I'm sure that there was a short time when Barry was kind of in fantasy land that all his problems were over. However, if you live a life like Barry Morphew, then contentment and happiness is not something easily found. I think that's why he kept falling into these I'm going to call them friendships, although I should be very careful about that. I think that everything with a person like Barry Morphew, I think everything is transactional. I think that he looks at people and relationships as what can you do for me? And I am willing to do for you, but what are you going to get back to me? And I think that opened him up to some really shady characters. Jeff Puckett was interviewed by AK. And there was the public facing interview that we all got to see. But then apparently there was a lot of conversation that happened behind the scenes with Jeff Puckett. And there was a lot of information gathered from that developing friendship. And part of that was this acknowledgement by Jeff Puckett that Barry was surrounded himself with really bad people, that he kind of enjoyed breaking the law and getting away with it. He kind of liked that. So he owned all kinds of like illegal firearms and things that most people wouldn't even have a use for. Like, why do you care if you have something like a sawed-off shotgun? Why do you care if you have that? Like, why is that fun and cool and interesting? Now, there's another problem too, or another, not problem, but situation, that Salida is an area that's kind of a hotbed for militia, right? For the patriot type of people that are very focused on, like, you know, traditional American values in life. Interestingly enough, there was a chapter of the Odinites that came from Indiana to the Salida area. Not exactly Salida, a little bit north. Craig is the name of the little town, which is really, really, I mean, you have to have your own septic tank. You got to use solar power if you've got a house or anything up there. So, and it's incredibly gorgeous. Like, you can't even imagine the beauty. But anyway, so I've got so much recording of these militia people just kind of walking the sidewalks with the upside down flag, which is, you know, it's the upside down flag is sending the message that we're a nation in distress, or we've got troops in distress. It's kind of like a SOS kind of thing. And they're frequently out on the sidewalks of Salida. It's a common sight to see them. And they're sometimes they're all decked out in their fatigues, hunter, what, you know, some people say, well, it's hunter green or whatever, but it's military uniforms, and they're serving in a military role. I'm talking about in their mind. So I don't know for a fact. I don't know that Barry was, I don't know that he described himself as being in a militia, but why wouldn't he have been? Right? That's kind of it would make sense that he would be. And this I do know, there are police officers in Salida and the sheriff's department that are outwardly in militia. This is not a shameful. You got to understand, these people are not bad, awful people. They believe that they're standing up for their country and that they're training to protect their town and their families. It's not a shameful act what they're doing. And so because of that, you've got a lot of regular, good, normal, mainstream people like police officers and firemen, teachers. I think if I can think anybody else, that they are actually actively in the militia, and they hang out together and they go out, you know, on the weekends and do their training. And that's the kind of thing that Barry Morphew would have fully embraced. So would Shoshona, or Shoho, as we lovingly call her. That was her thing as well. She was the exact opposite of Suzanne. She was an avid outdoorsman. She hunted, she did survivalist stuff. She was Barry's counterpart, his mirror image as a female, not Suzanne. She claims, Shoho claimed that people said, "Oh, you look just like Suzanne." No, maybe the color of your hair, but that's about where it ends. And even more important than just outward appearance, the personality of the two were completely different. Suzanne was a person that volunteered. She worked at a women's shelter. She volunteered at her church. She was helpful. She was loving. That was dramatically different than the way that reportedly Shoho spent her weekends, her free time. She's running around out in the woods too. She's a hard woman, right? She's pretty. I'm not saying that, physically she was delightful. She's a beautiful woman. But I can see where Barry would have felt more at peace with her. I think he would have been able to understand her far more than he ever understood Suzanne. And, when you look at the beginning of Barry and Suzanne's relationship, you look at the beginning of that where Suzanne was ill and Barry became the guardian angel. He was at her mom and dad's house all the time. When she got so sick that she couldn't walk, he would pick her up and carry her. He went from this identity of, I'm going to be Mr. Fancy Pants and I'm going to play in the show and I'm going to be Major League Baseball player. He went from that to kind of like this image of Florence Nightingale. And I suspect that gave him comfort. I think that losing the dream of a lifetime, literally, seeing the disappointment on his dad's face, I think that coming back and being with Suzanne and her family, where he actually was needed, where he could actually do things that would help them and lighten the load, and they legitimately felt that they were relying on Barry. I think that was something that saved Barry for the short term in terms of having lost his dream of Major League Baseball player, right? So he goes from being this guy who's really good. He's really, really good at baseball. And it wasn't just a fluke. It was something that took a lot of work to be that good. He dedicated his entire childhood and high school experience to, I have to be Barry the baseball player to avenge my dad, right? I think that being a part of Suzanne's illness and being wanted and legitimately needed by this family that was in distress, because I'm going to tell you something. When someone in your family is going through cancer treatment, that is not for the faint of heart. And any of you guys that have experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. You have got to be a warrior to fight cancer. The chemotherapy is brutal in a way that you just can't imagine. So I think early on that gave Barry purpose and identity. And so, he kind of fell into that role as, I know who I am now. I'm the caretaker of Suzanne, correct? And then as you track through their relationship to the bitter end, what you notice with Barry is every time Suzanne gets strong, every time Suzanne gets healthy, every time Suzanne is no longer dependent upon Barry, his identity suffers and he acts out. Throws a little temper tantrum, has an affair, does something hurtful, takes off into the backcountry for a month. You know, identity used to be at the heart of our psychological theory and case conceptualization. We paid a lot in the early days doing the initial psychological evaluation. You would look very, very closely at people, their personality factors for sure, but then more importantly, we would gather that background information on where did you go to school? Were you popular? Did you have friends that lasted a certain period of time? Do you have talents that you worked on and developed? Were you a loner? Did you spend time alone? Did your parent die young? Like we looked at all of the background historical information because that serves as a foundation for all the skills that you develop later on for personal identity, goal attainment, coping skills, level of resilience, all of those things that tell us, okay, is this person really in danger and they're just in grief? Or does this person lack a foundation that would keep them safe? And so we need to take extra care with their treatment. So we don't do that so much anymore. And part of that was driven by insurance and the whole, brief treatment, and things just really changed. Mindfulness has become a big deal, and I'm good with mindfulness. I like it. I teach it. I have a couple of coaches that I refer my patients to get training on meditation, mindfulness, referrals to do yoga for complex trauma, things like that. I embrace all that. But you never, ever, ever abandon what is this person's identity? Who do they think they are? And if whatever the picture is they have in their mind of who they think they are, how closely aligned are they to how they're living their day-to-day life? And so Barry grew up with an image of himself. He was a accomplished athlete, baseball player. But his day-to-day life drifted further and further and further and further away from that. So by the time that Suzanne went missing, there was nothing of which Barry was being celebrated other than, I can think of one thing. Barry beat a bunch of 20 and 30-year-old somethings at I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was a push-up contest at the local gym. And you think, wow, that's kind of crazy because he's an old dude, right? I mean, isn't he like 57, 56, right? So to beat someone half his age, people that are in the prime of their lives, people living in Colorado that are outdoorsmen, that, that was important to him. To me and you, we just kind of laugh and we go, well, 58. Yeah. So he would have been like 55 at the time. And you think about how, how many people that age do you know would even sign up for a contest like that to compete against the younger guys? Right? Most of them, these are men that go to the gym, they're buff, they're healthy, 50, 60-year-old something, but they wouldn't say, let me take my time out to be a part of your push-up contest. That's very strange, isn't it? Jeff was the one who got away, and Suzanne was questioning she made the wrong choice with Barry. Jeff was zero. Jeff was a nobody. And I think you're right, Dreamers Rule. I think that, I don't think so. So she was only with Jeff, according to her best friend in high school. She was only with Jeff one time when they were in high school, and it was a party at her house. There were not even just like, there wasn't even like discussions and friendship at school, really. So Barry found out about him being there at that party, and then he kind of terrorized Jeff Libler, like, stay away from her. And perhaps that's the reason why it never went any further than the one party, right? But I think that Suzanne really didn't have another boyfriend. Barry, and then the one little episode with Jeff, and the friends, the high school friends, have not really, they were pretty clear that there just wasn't other people besides Barry, and then the one episode with Libler. So as Barry begins to spend the night with Shoho, because here's another thing that most people don't know about. Barry and Shoho had gotten a house together in Salida. Now, was that common knowledge to Suzanne? Was there? It doesn't seem like it, because she says something in one of her text messages. She says something like, "I don't care what you're up to and have been for years." Maybe she did know what was going on with Shoho in the house. But the house is right there. You can see it. And he brought in this big giant rock. You know how he's always moving rocks around to do his landscaping, right? Well, he started doing that at this little house that he and Shoho were sharing. So was it, quotation marks, Shoho's house, and Barry just did sleepovers? Or did they say, okay, we're together now? And is that why Suzanne said, I could care less what you're up to now? I don't know. It's so hard to, it's hard to put it together. And I think part of what makes it difficult to put together is, essentially, in a nutshell, they were living separate lives. Barry would be gone for days on end. No accountability where he was. Just, he's not here. And that was okay with Suzanne. The daughter, I think, my guess, this is my guess, I don't know this, but it's my guess. My guess is that because it was not predictable when Barry would be coming back to the house, that when he did come to the house, there was a big argument, there was, fighting and whatnot. And I think that made the younger daughter very nervous. I think it robbed her of her ability to stay calm. She did tell Suzanne to get a restraining order. And I don't know if you guys, you got to think about this. When your teenage daughter tells you to get a restraining order, do you think that's because she just doesn't like dad? Or do you think that's because she's actually witnessed aggression? Sure seems like witnessing aggression, right? And when you look at this video, let me pull this back up. Hold on. Oh, did I think I ended it. Here, let me reopen it. Hold on. Oh, wrong one. me get this pulled back up so you can see it. Share screen. Okay. All right. So I intentionally put the spotlight on the younger daughter because her body language during this interview was instructive. All right. And if you look at this, you can clearly see where the alliance is. It is like the older daughter and Barry, they're the only ones in the room. And the younger one is kind of being held there, right? And if you pan back out so you can see their hands, the way Barry's holding her hand is dramatically different than what's happening with the older one. She is holding Barry, right? So this interview, and I can show this when I go live later on today, I'll show this. You can see in the younger daughter's face that she is in complete shock as she listens to her sister talk. You get the very distinct feeling that she is not a part of this little powwow. And Barry owned a house with his mother in Noblesville. He made the mother sign the house over to him, and then he turned around and gave the house to Mallory legally. The house is now Mallory's to do with what she will. Macy is nowhere in sight. She's not in any of this large wealth value property being moved around. She's nowhere in it. Now, last October 2024, I believe, the girls did get their life insurance money from the death of Suzanne. The gossip is that Barry gave Mallory the house, and then Mallory took her million or whatever the life insurance policy was, several $100,000. She gave that cash to Barry. But again, as you get into all this, you don't see anything from Macy. Nothing about her part of the money, her where she's living, who she's with. Mallory is got the house, and she's, well, as of about 4 or 5 months ago, she was still living in Colorado working. So kind of interesting. It seems like I did hear some gossip that maybe Macy was back in Indiana. Did I hear that? I think maybe Macy moved to Indiana, but Mallory was still out in Colorado. And then if you go, and there you see it again, where Macy is not buying this. Like Barry and Mallory are having this, oh, I just love him so much, and we know our dad, and he's such a sweet guy. And I want you to take a long look at her face. That is a micro expression that lasted for about 7 or 10 seconds. It was not micro. Does she look like she's buying that? Well, shoot. Sorry about that, y'all. Does she look like she's buying into that? Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. She's listening to her sister talk, and she's thinking, who is this? And what did you do with my sister? Because you sound insane. I'm going to be going live again. I got to work for a couple of hours, and then I'll be back. And we'll actually look at the actual news clip where you can watch it. And I'm telling you, Macy is an outsider, and she's listening to her sister and her dad, and she just has this look on her face like, what are you talking about? She rarely looks at them. She kind of keeps her eyes down a bit. And there's even one point where she smirks, outwardly smirks. And then when it's her turn to talk, and Barry does this weird, like in slow motion, turns his head to look at her. And Mallory's looking at her like kind of like stern. And when she does begin to talk, she just says, Linda, please find my mom. Just please find my mom. And it's just heartbreaking. Like it makes me, tear up right now because you can imagine the isolation that she's been in. So, well, Kelly, that's kind of what I thought when I heard the rumor that she had moved back to Indiana. Part of that I wondered, is that possible? Maybe that signals that they have at least opened up lines of communication together. That's only conjecture. I'm guessing. I have zero idea. I have no idea what the truth is. But it would be a good thought. I also found it very interesting that the news, when they announced the press conference for this second arrest, they said, the Colorado newspaper, they said the girls were going to be at the press conference. So when I heard that, I thought that sounds like they're in support of their mom, that they're on board with the arrest. But then, yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything else right now. I may say something later. All right. So, another thing I think we have to think about. Oh, Melissa French. Melissa said, the rage at home was my young life. It's very sad. You will take the Roger side to keep from being the recipient of the rage, even if you can't stand the person. Exactly, Melissa. 100%. It is very easy for us to get up on our high horse and say, do the virtue signaling route and say, how dare you not stand up for your mom, and how dare you? The reality is you're not stopping to consider the world that these two girls are living in. Their lives have become center stage for these online discussions, and that has got to be bizarre to experience that. They've also opened up to a world where they were convinced that their mother ran away to Ecuador. Barry even opened up bank accounts and claimed that he had $60,000 stolen by Suzanne, and that, Suzanne was a mom who took the money and ran. And that's how they had to live for several years, with this belief. Well, now what do? Because they know where she is. She's not in Ecuador, and she didn't take the $60,000. So who opened the bank accounts? Well, we know who opened the bank accounts, right? They were all done online. You know who did it? The man who was setting up pieces of evidence to lead the investigators away from Suzanne's body. Look at me. I'm in Brimfield. I'm in Denver. Look at me going to all these trash cans, throwing away all these rando objects. Look at me, investigators. Look over here. Ha ha ha. I'm the magic man, which is exactly what they did. And it took them completely away from where Suzanne really was, which was a composting heap back behind his house that was later picked up as just topsoil to be moved out to Saguache, maybe even in preparation of a pasture. But he ran around being suspicious, We got 5 trees. We got 5 dumpsters. We got 5 trash runs. We got Barry in a hotel, but his truck is running and he's making phone calls through his truck. Of all the suspicious activity, it just screams, look at me. Look at the location that we're working on at the road. Look how suspicious I am. This man knew what he was doing. It's really horrifying. The coldness of the plan. And it was a plan that required more than just, oh no, I lost my temper. Now what will I do? He even set up Jeff Libler. You go, what? What are you talking about, Jules? How did he set up Jeff Libler? All of those friend requests that were made, and how many of them were to guys named Jeff? And everybody said, oh, well, that's because he heard the recording in the pen. He was trying to figure out who is Jeff. He left the pen where the investigators would find it, and they would hear, oh, look, Suzanne's having an affair with Jeff. He knew what she was doing. The man had cameras everywhere. Do you remember what he said in the first arrest affidavit? He told the investigators that Suzanne would not even go into the garage because she didn't want to be recorded by all the cameras. And he was like, I never had any cameras up there. I don't know what she was talking about. It was definitely Barry texting Jeffrey. I totally agree. Yes. Yeah. There was no pizza run. That was, I really wish they would launch an investigation into Isis Eton. And it was her behavior with the Barry Morphew case. I believe, my conjecture, my opinion, I believe that it was Isis being so nutty defending Barry that Drew Nielsen said, let me out of this. I watched Drew Nielsen just about crawl over the table trying to get to Iris in the courtroom. She looked at Isis and she said, stop. And Isis just kept on going. And she said, Iris, stop. And she motioned like over toward her. I got it. I recorded it. I've got a video of it. Yeah, no. They need to investigate Iris Eton and the way she handled this thing. This is a really crazy. What they did was crazy. It was crazy. All right. Okay, so I do have to go to work. I'm going to be back. We are going to do today the domestic violence thing. And so you guys go take a walk, get out in the sun, go watch some other YouTubers, and then I'll be back in just a little while and we'll continue this discussion. Okay. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please hit the thumbs up. Please share on your social media. And just like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. See you later. Bye.